Welcome to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast. The P.A.S. Report provides an honest analysis on the critical issues that matter to you without the biased media filters. Here's your host, Professor Nick Giordano.
Thank you. Let's bring in Jill Simonian, Director of Outreach at PragerU Kids, and Nick Giordano, Fellow at Campus Reform's Higher Education Fellowship. Thank you both for coming on. We appreciate it. Jill, I want to play some sound. This is from 1, a Columbia student, 2, a Tulane University student, and 3, Cornell University student. Watch.
I was once proud to say I attended Columbia Law School, and proud to one day say that I will be an alum of this institution. But no more. I'm embarrassed.
There's simply no tiptoeing around the fact that what Hamas did is evil, and there's no defense for terrorism. So these protests, they're not pro-Palestinian, they're anti-Jewish and anti-Israel.
Our initial reaction was absolute fear. I mean, when posts are coming up on my phone about how people want to kill me and want to bomb my home and our home as a Jewish community, it's terrifying.
I mean, I just came back from Israel. I'm stunned by the amount of shock and hate. I'm not even shocked. I'm stunned by the amount of hate and fear on college campuses in the United States.
Yeah, I do not happen to be a Jewish mother. I'm a Christian mother, but I am terrified about what I have been seeing on social media. And that was the first time that I ever saw that sound that you played, and tears filled up my eyes because this is very serious. And I'm not shocked, though. I'm not shocked, though, because this is what we have been shouting about and warning about for years at PragerU. Marxism has infiltrated our colleges, it has infiltrated our high schools and now our elementary schools the past few decades, and it has resulted in students defending violence against all facts, defending terrorist organizations like Hamas on campus. This is the result of our failed and hijacked education system.
And Nicholas, I want to put on the flip side, I want to play some sound from pro-Palestinian protesters. Look.
You can shut down a chapter, you can't shut down us as individuals who are speaking out for Palestine.
Young people do not support the genocide in Palestine, do not support the occupation of Palestine.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free!
Nicholas, do they realize when they say river to the sea that they're calling for the extermination of Israelis?
Some do and some don't. I mean, it's an education system that's now breeding ignorance. And unfortunately, at Campus Reform, we've been warning about this since 2009, that we're seeing increasing radicalization throughout the education system. Consider that most students don't even know the basic facts of the Holocaust. Only 13% of them can identify aspects of American history, including World War II. And now you have school boards talking about doing away with proficiency standards when it comes to reading, writing, and math to get a high school diploma, which isn't going to work well. But it makes it easy to radicalize them on college campuses. And these students, wittingly or unwittingly, are calling for a second Holocaust. And we need to reassess the education system and bring it back to the sense of nationhood that it was built upon.
I want to get you both on this, because do we have this Harvard-Harris poll, Kevin, to put up on the screen? Because this is what kind of shocked me. This is the Harvard-Harris poll, and if we can put this up, we do not have it. Okay, so we don't have it, but it showed that 52% are in favor of Israel, and 48%, Jill, are not. There it is, finally. 48%, with the margin of error, this is a dead heat. This is a 50-50 proposition.
And it's evidence of how severely our students and young learners have been brainwashed. Again, against all facts, against all reason. They have been brainwashed through, first defending violence with BLM protest. No, if one little group feels as though they're oppressed, then violence is absolutely okay. And it's not okay. No. But our children have been brainwashed to feel that way, and what we're seeing on college campuses is a result of that.
Nicholas, I've got 15, 20 seconds for you here. I mean, the same people who say that words are violence are literally in favor of, exterminating, eradicating the Jewish population. Final thoughts.
And this is a result of the anti-Americanism, anti-Semitism, and anti-Western civilization that we've seen in our culture being pushed in the education system. And we got to get back to the assimilation process, because assimilation is what's essential.
Nicholas Giordano, Jill Simonian, good to have you on. Thank you.
When things go sideways, you want to be prepared. Protect you and your family. And people are concerned. They might have to go for a long time without food, electricity. That's why I want to introduce you to 4patriots.com. Get preparedness products you could use now, and that could save your life later. My favorite is 4Patriots' new solar generator, the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. It uses the endless free power of the sun to power your lights, your TV, medical equipment, even run your fridge. Plus, it's expandable and comes with a free solar panel. Or you can pick up one of 4Patriots' best-selling survival food kits. Delicious tasting and designed to last for 25 years. They even have kits with real meat. And if the power's out, no worries. Just boil water over fire, simmer, and serve. You're going to enjoy a hot meal and stay safe in a crisis. More smart people than ever are finding 4Patriots. Over 2 million customers trust them, and you might have even seen them on TV. I had the folks at 4Patriots set up a special page for you at 4patriots.com/PAS so that listeners of this podcast can see this week's discounts and deals before they go away. Go to 4patriots.com/PAS, but you gotta hurry because the deals don't last long. So save more money, get peace of mind, and protect you and your family. Go to 4patriots.com/PAS.
Our diversity is our strength, and our unity is our power as a nation.
Hi, I'm Major Rachel Jones, and what Pride means to me is celebrating that diversity is our strength as a nation and as an army.
We believe our diversity, our differences, when joined together by a common set of ideals, makes us stronger.
Who we are as Americans, embodying the simple truth that our diversity is the strength of this nation.
No, it's not. Diversity's death. That's what it is. It's the death of everything. As soon as you prioritize something that's not important, whatever you're doing will die. Slowly but surely. Joining me now, a professor, Professor Nicholas. Is it Giordano? Is that how I say that? I don't want to mess it up, Professor.
You got it.
Professor Giordano, Higher Education Fellow at Campus Reform. Professor, is diversity our strength?
No, that's a myth. And unfortunately, it's a myth that's been going on for too long. What our strength is assimilation. The reality in America is that there's nothing that really links us together. We're a whole bunch of different people from different places that come together to create one nation. We don't have 2,000 years of recorded history. We don't have one shared culture and customs and traditions. And so we have to figure out a way, how do we link this society together, make it work and coexist together? Because if you look at any other society, slight variations leads to warfare, leads to attacks on each other. Here in the United States, we've made it work by understanding that we have a melting pot that people go through. They assimilate to American culture, shedding some of their previous culture, and adopt American political philosophies. The appreciation for concepts of liberty and freedom, the appreciation for capitalism, the appreciation for individualism, that we are in control of our own destiny, and the concept, the all-important concept of limited government that we've long forgotten about. Now, you have to assimilate into the culture in order to appreciate America. What we've seen with this diversity is our strength nonsense is that's a tribal society. You create these groups, and then these groups end up going after each other, and we're witnessing that today.
Professor, how is that, the diversity, the focus on a ridiculous concept as you just laid out, how has it led to what we're seeing now on college campuses? A lot of people, now I've been all over this for a while, as have you, but a lot of people are just now waking up to the fact we have a bunch of vicious little commie monsters on our college campuses. How did diversity get us there?
Yeah, well, I can't believe that people are shocked by this. At Campus Reform, we've been warning about this for well over a decade, and unfortunately, people weren't paying attention. Our education system is no longer based on actual education. It's based on indoctrination. And our education system breeds ignorance throughout our society. It's not about facts. And it doesn't just start at the college level. It begins all the way in kindergarten. When we look at the K through 12 system, most students don't even know about the Holocaust. They can't talk about basic facts that Hitler rose to power through the democratic process. They can't name one concentration camp. They don't know how many people died in the concentration camps. Then you look at American history, only 13% of American students demonstrate proficiency in American history. That includes World War II. How can we survive as a nation if you don't understand the nation? And as they go through this failed education system, they're then bombarded with messaging of anti-Americanism, anti-Western civilization, anti-Semitism, and that makes it very easy at the college level to indoctrinate students when they don't have a foundation end in education. They can't critically think for themselves. They can't problem solve. It leaves them open to the messaging and the indoctrination that's taken place. That's why it's so radicalized on these campuses.
Professor, one of the things that concerns me greatly is our elite college campuses, the Harvards, the Yales, the Cornells, NYUs, these types, the kind of schools I could never get into, the kind of schools that produce our leaders in this society, and they're a disaster. Either they're getting China money, they're getting billions from the Arab world, and these are the universities that are the most radical, and that's not an accident, is it?
No, it's not an accident. We put out a report of billions of dollars being transferred from governments like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and the big one, obviously, is China. They've been able to infiltrate our college campuses. And we know about the sophistication of the Chinese apparatus with their influence campaigns. When it comes to the Arab governments, we don't know a lot about where this money is flowing to, what's the intended purpose for it. And that's something that Congress should be looking into. I mean, I held a security clearance for years, and I had to report every single time I had contact with a foreign national. These colleges and universities don't have to report the contact, what the money's going to, what's the intent behind it. And we don't know if some of this money is hitting these student groups that are essentially calling for a second genocide. These are not Palestinian protests. These are pro-Hamas protests. They're supporting a terrorist organization. And you see the Marxists fusing with the Islamists, and that's the conditions that we're in. And you're right, every American should be terrified because these are the future leaders, right? These are the future policymakers, doctors, lawyers, industry leaders. And so where are we headed as a society? And as our nation declines, well, just look at the education system. It directly correlates. The failures in education directly correlates with the death of a nation.
Why the crossover with the Islamists, the jihadi lovers, and the American communists? All those kids who were at the Black Lives Matter rallies, the Antifa rallies, they're all the same kids now at the Hamas-loving rallies. What's so appealing?
Yeah, apparently Jewish lives don't matter. That's what we're witnessing on these college campuses. But it's because everything is based on emotional arguments. And we don't use reason, logic, or even common sense anymore. I mean, if you ask the majority of these students that are protesting, when did Palestine become an official nation state? Most will say off a random date, yet Palestine was never an official nation state. Palestine didn't exist. It was Israel. Then it turned into the land of Palestinians through the Romans, and Jews were referred to as Palestinians up until the early 20th century. Yet they don't know these basic facts to understand it. They don't know that the Arab governments invaded Israel not to free Palestinians, but to take over the lands for themselves. And so it really is remarkable. If you challenge them, they can't answer questions, but they're driven by emotion. And that's what our education system has done. It's not about facts anymore. It's about using emotion to push a political agenda. And they've done a good job of that, as we're witnessing. These are not small protests going on college campuses. Now, here's the crazy part. If you protest in support of conservatism or limited government, you're going to be relegated to some obscure part of campus in one of their free speech zones because your protest in support of limited government or conservatism can trigger other students. Yet here we actively have students calling for the annihilation of Israel, and yet they get to protest wherever they want on the college campus. Truly remarkable.
Do you think parents are starting to wake up to the poison on college campuses now? Look, when I was a kid, I even went to college for a year, and of course I failed out before I joined the Marines, but that's how I was raised. That's how everyone my age was raised. You got to go to college. You got to go to college. Is that going away?
Yes, I think that's actually gone. That was a myth that in order to live a successful life, you need to go to college, when the reality is there's actually alternatives where you could be just as successful and not have to spend $150,000 getting indoctrinated, whether it's two-year schools, whether it's trade schools, whether it's starting your own business. But parents have woken up because what they see is they invest all their money in this education, and then when their kids graduate, they can't get a job. And nobody wants to be $100,000 in debt and be living at home with their parents and become a store clerk. So I think a lot of people started to re-question whether or not college is useful. But also we've seen major corporations, Google, IBM, Tesla, Bank of America, Walmart corporate positions. We reported at Campus Reform how they have done away with the 4-year degree requirement for a lot of positions. States like New Jersey, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Virginia have also moved away from 4-year degree requirements because the education system is not properly training students to be productive citizens, to critically think and problem solve. And so there's going to be less value for this piece of paper that people are receiving. And now that the donor class has finally woken up, you thought it would have came about when they were pushing anti-Americanism, but they finally woken up where they're not going to be contributing the money anymore. They've already threatened to stop the donations. That will get the attention of the administration of these institutions, and it will force them to change their behaviors.
Yeah, let's hope so. Professor, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I don't think you can count on Hamas. I think when people call for a ceasefire, they're calling for Israel to stop firing. I don't think there's anyone that actually expects that Hamas would agree to a ceasefire, a terrorist organization.
State Department spokesman Matthew Miller explaining why calls from protesters for a ceasefire would only benefit terrorists. Well, Data for Progress, a left-wing think tank, found 80% of Democrats believe the U.S. should call for a ceasefire as we see this growing sentiment with younger Americans as students across the country stage walkouts. But as some of these students call for a ceasefire and an end to, quote, genocide, some educators say it's actually a lack of history about genocide that's fueling this uprising, noting a majority of millennials and Gen Zers don't know basic facts about the Holocaust, as we see a rise of this anti-Semitism across college campuses. Axios pointed to a survey from 2020 that showed 63% of Americans didn't know 6 million Jews were murdered, and 20% of millennials and Gen Z in New York felt Jews caused the Holocaust. Campus Reform's higher education fellow Nick Giordano joining us this morning to discuss. Professor Giordano, welcome back to the National Desk. Good morning to you. You say the problem stems from what's being taught in schools. While many states do teach students about the Holocaust, a lot of states don't actually require it as part of the history curriculum. Why do you think that is?
That's true. You have 31 states that don't require it. And the justification is that we have to teach World War II, so it's going to be taught when we teach World War II. But the problem with that logic is we see the results of proficiency levels in history, and they're only at 13%. Only 13% of students demonstrate proficiency. And polls show that students know very little about the Holocaust. They don't know, they can't name one concentration camp. They don't know Hitler rose to power through democratic means. And so it really is a problem. And if you look at the arguments that protesters are making now, they're saying that Israel's engaged in a genocide as the protesters call for a genocide against Israel. And there's only Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran that have called for an ethnic cleansing of Jews in Israel every single day since 1948. So when we look at these types of things, it really goes to show that students are ill-informed about what's really going on. And we have to do a better job teaching them historical facts as opposed to teaching them about emotion and letting emotion drive the debate.
We have some specific examples, too, across the country of where we're seeing some of this. A California school district right now being sued by Jewish groups for allowing an ethnic studies course to include teachings that equate Israel with settler colonialism. How prevalent are ethnic studies courses in K through 12 classrooms across the U.S. and how are these concerns now being addressed?
Well, in California, they have to mandate the ethnic studies programs, and each school district is going to have a varying view. But what we see is actually troubling because in an earlier version of the ethnic studies program, it alluded to Polish and Jewish immigrants as having built-in white privilege here in the United States from when they first arrived, regardless of the hardships they face. So these school districts are actually fostering anti-Semitism. And when we're not teaching about critical thinking and historical facts, it makes students more susceptible to indoctrination when they get to the college level.
And conversations about the Hamas-Israel conflict, we know, can get heated. We've seen that already. So when does free speech then cross the line and become anti-Semitic?
Well, it's amazing because logic should prevail. It shouldn't be controversial when we're talking about Hamas and Israel. Hamas is a terrorist organization that slaughtered 1,400 innocent civilians, including 32 Americans. And we need to remember that. Now, free speech is wide-ranging. However, when you start threatening people, when you start harassing people, that's where the criminal element fits in, and that's where you could take action against someone. In addition, when we do see pro-Hamas sentiment, if anyone tries to provide material support to Hamas, they can be charged under federal and state laws. So it can cross a line. However, you have to push the boundaries pretty far.
Amy Asen, the Vice President and Director of Strengthening Congregations for the Union of Reformed Judaism, told an organization, quote, a news organization, it should also be about recognizing the signs, the threats to democracy, and how anti-Semitism is the gateway to racism. So what's the bottom line here with what we're seeing across college and high school campuses? What's the solution?
I think the solution is that we got to get back to real history. We got to stop focusing on the diversity, equity, inclusion nonsense that actually create all these different groups and then pit the groups against each other. We have to focus on the totality of history, both the good and the bad, of what happened in the Holocaust, of what happened during World War II. And we have to make sure that the curriculums that are being built out reflect this. We also should be encouraging school districts nationwide show films, show documentaries on the horrors of the Holocaust. It's one thing to hear a teacher say it. It's another thing to see it with your eyes and ears. And we have to get students reading more, to read The Diary of Anne Frank, to learn what it was like in Nazi Germany so that we never let it happen again. Unfortunately, too many have forgotten the further we moved away from World War II.
Professor Nicholas Giordano, always great talking to you. Thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast.
Have a good one. Bye.
Be sure to rate, share, and subscribe to the podcast so you'll never miss an episode. Also, visit PASreport.com and follow us on Twitter at PAS Report.